Steve has actually been a friend of mine for quite a while. I think one reason is I think he's really a disguised old hippie. Because when I read his writing about the elderly, he's so passionate that I know that he must have protested in the 60s. So, and it's come out at this point in time in his passion towards the elderly and the living out of his faith. He has a ministry called Love Thy Neighbor, where he goes into nursing homes, and it's holistic in that he develops relationships with people and ministers to them through relationships. And his passion for the number of people that are here, the commitment, and what he's done in organizing people to go into nursing homes has touched me, moved me, and impressed me that he is one of those that shows his faith through his works. So Steve, would you come up and share a little bit about what you're doing and some of the demographics, please?
Thank you. This is nice. I'm going to sit down if that's okay. Just do a little presentation for you. Can you all hear me, or should I use the mic?
Use the mic.
How's that?
Great.
All right, good. Well, good afternoon. My name is Steve Kacprzak, and I'm the Executive Director of Love Thy Neighbor Ministries. I'll tell you a little bit more about our organization a little later in the presentation. But I've been asked to speak with you today about how the church is responding to our frail elderly who live in nursing homes and assisted living facilities here in our community. Would you just join me for a moment of prayer? Heavenly Father, thank you for being our God, our Creator, Redeemer, and Sustainer. We praise and worship your holy name. Thank you for your presence with us here today. And thank you for all those who are here and for the opportunity to fellowship and learn from each other. Clear our minds, Lord, from the distractions of the world and open our ears and our hearts. In Jesus' name, amen. Let me begin my talk by asking you a question. Have you ever thought what life would be like if you lived in a nursing home? Think about that for just a minute. Well, let me help you now envision what life would be like. Moving into a nursing home or similar type of senior adult care facility is a frightening experience. It's a radically life-changing step for you. You've given up independent living, your home, your work, your lifelong activities. You will no longer have room for those family heirlooms or special possessions that you've cherished for so long. It's very likely that you'll be sharing a room with an ongoing variety of strangers. You will experience a loss of dignity and a feeling of helplessness and hopelessness. As time goes by, your life and your interests will turn inward and become very narrow, focusing on issues of health, your daily routine, and your few remaining possessions. Visits from family and friends often become fewer and fewer. You probably will no longer be able to attend church because of your health, or frankly, because no one comes to date. You will experience spiritual starvation and a weakening of your faith. You may, as many do, feel angry and feel that God no longer cares about you. Now, if you fall into the 50+% of residents that we have surveyed, you will be receiving no regular outside visitors. You feel abandoned. Companionship and meaningful relationships are crucial to your well-being, although they are hard to establish in such an environment. We've seen how grace-filled change can happen when we bring God's love into the equation through caring visits. In his book on nursing home reform, titled Life Worth Living, the renowned geriatric physician Dr. William Thomas writes this: "The things that decay the spirit of today's nursing home residents are loneliness, helplessness, and boredom. And for these definitions, he offers the following. Loneliness is the pain we feel when we want but cannot have companionship. Now let me point out here that he's not speaking of solitude, which can be a time of pleasure in being alone. Helplessness is the pain that we feel when we always receive care, but we never give it. And boredom is the pain we feel when our lives lack variety and spontaneity. As I walk the halls of these facilities, I see family and friends visiting their loved one, church members occasionally visiting a member of their flock. I see Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses visiting and leading small groups. But I must tell you, brothers and sisters, this just breaks my heart. The one thing that I do not see is a clear presence of the evangelical Christian church in these facilities. The Reverend Dr. Chong Sung Lee writes in his book, Nursing Home Ministry, A New Model. He says, today many of the social duties of charity once carried by the church are instead addressed by the state. Churches need a revival of their duties to participate adequately in the support of human need, especially for the increasing number of frail elderly who are living longer. The frail elderly need to be delivered from their spiritual desert where they are lonely and helpless. We must not forget and must remind ourselves of those who cannot rescue themselves from their own fears and their own loneliness. The body of Christ is alive in this world through those who follow Christ and know him as their Lord and Savior. We have been commissioned to assume the responsibility of caring for the elderly, the disabled, and the needy. God has called us, all of those who know his Son as their Lord, to serve him. His word proclaims his call for us to visit the widows and the fatherless. The scriptures record in James 1:27, I'm sure you all know this well, the words of the half-brother of Jesus, challenging all of us when he said, pure religion and undefiled before God and the Father is this, to visit the fatherless and widows in their affliction, and to keep himself unspotted from the world. Love Thy Neighbor Ministries was founded in 2002 as a 501c3 nonprofit ministry. I remember the day just before then that I sat down with Randy and he encouraged me. I said, I'm going to do this. He said, good. I'm not sure. We're a Christ-centered, non-denominational organization that recruits and trains and enables Christian volunteers to serve the Lord by serving those who live in senior adult care facilities. Our mission is to show God's love to those who live in these facilities by providing loving, caring, helpful, and neighborly visits. Proverbs 14:31 says, he who honors his maker has mercy. 10 years ago, when we first began the ministry, there were 226 adult care, long-term care facilities in Pima County. Now, those facilities are nursing homes, assisted living centers, and assisted living homes. There may be homes right in your own neighborhood you don't even know about. You won't see a sign necessarily. They were housing at that time about 6,600 elders. Today, there are 574 senior adult long-term care facilities housing approximately 9,500 elders. And these numbers are growing larger quickly. That's a 50% increase in 10 years. In the beginning, Love Thy Neighbor Ministries had hoped that the newly trained volunteers who were serving the Lord by visiting these residents would take that message of need back to their pastors and to their elders and maybe ignite a passion for this mission field. This unfortunately hasn't happened. And our outreach, though effective, has just only touched the tip of a growing iceberg. Pastors, ministry leaders, does your church have an active ministry visiting the institutionalized elderly? Does it include visits to the residents who are unchurched? Some churches visit with their own members, but forget and even ignore others who have no church affiliation, who just go on unsaved. The Again, we find it's the Mormons and the Jehovah's Witnesses walking the corridors of these facilities. It troubles me greatly. Those who are confined in long-term care of our community need spiritual help. Remember Jesus' words in Matthew 25:40. He said, "Assuredly, I say to you, inasmuch as you did it to one of the least of these, my brethren, you did it to me." Visiting in a nursing home provides wonderful opportunities for sharing the gospel. Consider what Dr. Harold Koenig writes in his book, Aging in God. He says, religious conversion involves a prolonged reorientation of goals and motivations in life so that God, or Jesus for the Christian, becomes the object of ultimate concern. Such religious change is not restricted to adolescence or early adulthood, but may occur at any time during the lifespan, including old age. The fact that 40% of elderly men experience such changes, 40% in religious faith after the age of 50, is clear evidence for the possibility of real and sometimes dramatic spiritual growth in later life. Such religious change seldom occurs in the absence of some type of psychological stress or conflict that displaces whatever existed previously as the object of ultimate concern. Psalm 71:9 and 18 tells us, "Do not cast me off in the time of old age. Forsake me not when my strength is spent. So even to old age and gray hairs, O God, do not forsake me, till I proclaim thy might to all generations to come." From recruiting volunteers over the years, we've learned that while many felt called to serve God through helping the frail elderly, not every Christian felt called to serve one-on-one. As a result, we found ourselves and found ways to bless residents and develop additional programs to join volunteer talents and residents' needs. One frequent request that is made of Love Thy Neighbor is for someone in our organization to lead a Bible study group. And to meet this need, we've established a unique small group Bible study program. It's a resource designed to equip ordinary Christians who are willing to step up to the task with no special talent, but only that desire to reveal the heart of God to a population of our community in desperate need of His Word. Our Stitches for Love program came into existence as a missionary program after we began to see the wonderful opportunity to bless the residents with something handmade. Over the years, Stitches for Love program, through its dedicated volunteers, has produced thousands of individual handmade items: knitted, crocheted, sewn blankets, quilts, leg warmers, walker pockets, wheelchair pockets and bags, and a few other very special items. As with all of our programs and services, these handmade items are given free of charge to the residents. Our Canine Corps program is designed to brighten the lives of our residents' neighbors by providing weekly visits from trained Christian volunteers and their pets, primarily puppies and dogs. Our Good Neighbor Band was formed with the goal of bringing smiles, pleasant memories, and the gospel message to the elders by providing quality musical entertainment. Since its formation, the band has performed many, many concerts in these facilities, entertaining hundreds of residents and staff members. In the 10 years that Love Thy Neighbor Ministries has served the Lord inside the doors of the nursing homes and assisted living centers of our community, we've learned a lot. And we would be happy to share our knowledge, experience, and resources with your church to help them get started or to further expand this rewarding work. With 574 facilities in Pima County, it's very likely that at least one is in a convenient distance from your church. And we have complete and up-to-date listings of all the various facilities that we would be happy to share with you. And as I said that, it just became outdated. There's probably another place that's open and another place that's closed. So. But we try to stay up-to-date on all of that, and we have it. I placed my business card And a recent copy of my newsletter, our newsletter, The Good Neighbor, over there in that table, on the information table. Please help yourself. If you'd also like to learn more about us, you can be reached at www.LTNM, Love Thy Neighbor Ministries, LTNM.org. You know, when we train new volunteers, I always encourage them to end their visits with a good joke. Now, I'm not promising you anything, except that. Let me tell you a joke. Sunday, a pastor is preaching a sermon to his congregation in this little country church, and he's preaching on the scripture, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And he's telling his congregants that no one is perfect, no, not one. But everybody's just kind of sitting quietly. Nobody's responding. He's not getting any amen, and he's not seeing any changes in the face, and he's wondering, what am I doing wrong here? What's going on? So he just feels strong. He said, listen, if there is anyone here that feels that they're perfect, stand up. Way back in the last row of the church, a little man stands up. The pastor's just bewildered. He can't believe this. He said, sir, do you mean to tell me that by standing, you're saying that you're perfect? The gentleman says, no, pastor, I'm not. He said, I'm simply standing on behalf of my wife's first husband.
You know, when you're emceeing, you're never sure whether you should critique people's material before they get up. Thanks. One of the ministries that has permeated our community the most is ICS, Interfaith Community Services. And I don't think we have a St. Do we have a St. Andrews person here? Lynn's here, but no pastors, right? St. Andrews has really planted some amazing ministries in our community. And ICS has been one of the plants out of their church. And today I have the privilege of introducing Karen McDonald's going to be our main speaker, and I also had the privilege of eating lunch with her. She is the person in ICS that really brings the collaborations together between church and this parachurch ministry. And it is a large ministry. There's over 60 churches, right? Almost 70 churches that work together in penetrating our community and ministering to the elderly. And it's Cheryl Anderson, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cheryl is also going to come up and talk about their ministry. Karen is a pastor here in the community and works with ICS and is in a key position to be able to tell us actually what they accomplish and how they do this in our community.
churches, they were all in the Northwest, obviously, and that's where St. Andrews is, came together and got the ball rolling, we might say. We are now almost 70 congregations of a variety of denominations, religions that are doing this work together, and it's just amazing what happens when we bring people together. I know you know what that's like. So the other piece and there's always room at the table for faith communities to join this work together through ICS, and I'd love to talk to you about that if there's any interest in that regard. The other strength for us is that we are also volunteer-based. We have a staff of approximately 16 full-time equivalent positions and a core of 600 volunteers, and that's really where the rubber hits the road. The volunteers are doing the stories that you're going to hear from Cheryl and all of the other services that we do. So that's really what it gives us our strength, the faith communities and the volunteers. Very briefly, one arm of what we do is to help people in financial crisis. We have 2.5 caseworker positions in 2 offices that help people with things like rent, mortgage, and utilities, and then some discretionary funding that helps mostly with back-to-work items. Maybe they can't afford the drug test to get approved for a job, so we'll pay for the drug test, for example. We also have at both of those offices what we call a resource center. That's a place equipped with computers and databases and volunteers that help, where people can come and look for work. They can write resumes, they can work on interview skills. We have a financial literacy course available online for folks. So that's sort of another layer of helping people get back on their feet. And both sites also have a food bank available. And it's interesting how many elderly folk need to use that financial assistance and or the food bank. So it's sort of an overlap in both of those areas. And the resource centers sometimes. One of our former volunteers, as a matter of fact, he must have been at least 85, found himself in a position where he had to go back to work. And so he every week, he was in our resource center, knocking on Walmart's door most of the time, to see if he could get a job there. So it is available for everyone, and it really is interesting to see that overlap, even among the elderly population. Did you know the fastest growing population in Pima County, according to Pima Council on Aging, are people who are 85 and older. And many of those folks, who we call elderly, they want to stay living where they are. They want to stay home. My dad's told me, he's turning 80 tomorrow, the only way you get me out of this house is in a pine box. So folks generally want to stay home. That's where they're familiar. They maybe still have connections, if not with family, at least maybe with neighbors. And so the pieces that Cheryl will talk about now are ways that interfaith community services help people maintain their independence who are either seniors or disabled folks. So Cheryl, take it away.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Thanks for having us here today. Karen and I love our job because we know we're making a difference every day. And as she said, ICS offers a number of programs that make it possible for seniors to live independently and stay at home. I have a my banner. This is my handy-dandy handout that I hope you will take when you leave. It has a list of all the description of the services that ICS provides in terms of caregiving, and it has the zip codes that we serve and also the registration process. Transportation is one of the most popular programs. In a fiscal year, we provide more than 3,700 rides to more than 300 seniors. The rides are free, and they're provided by volunteers who use their own cars to do the transportation. And we like to say that they give arm-in-arm service because they go pick the person up and they take them to wherever they're going and they escort them into the building, they wait with them, and then they take them home again. So it's not just, they're providing a the daughter works full-time, and she has her own medical issues, so it's hard for her to provide any kind of support. They used to go to church, but they can't drive anymore, and so they haven't been able to do that, and they have some friends in town, but those friends are also aging and can't help them very much. So unfortunately, at some point, her husband ended up having to go into a hospice facility, and she was trying to take Sunvan, which is the public transportation, the handicap van, to visit him twice, 2 or 3 times a week. And they had to sell their home, and she moved into this little tiny apartment that was about 3 miles away from where he was. But it took like hours for her to, take Sunvan, and they were stopping a lot of different places. And so to go there and see her husband and then spend another hour coming back was just a nightmare. She was exhausted. There was one time where she got stuck in the rain. Another time she was using her walker to try to go across a gravel path. So it was just really, really difficult. So somehow she found out about ICS, and she registered with us, and we were able to find volunteers to take her in their car a couple times a week to the hospice center. And she just loved the company of the volunteers. It really brightened her day, even though it must be really difficult for her to go and see her husband in hospice. It really reduced her stress level, and she was very, very grateful for our services. So I hope, again, I hope that you all take one of the handouts and that you refer people to us and also consider volunteering for us. Do you have any questions? The programs that, yes, thank you.
How are you funded?
How are we funded? That's a
Very
good
diverse
question.
funding.
Excuse me, Cheryl, sorry. Thank you for that question. How are we funded? We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and so our support comes, I mentioned the rent, mortgage, and utility assistance that we offer. That's government funding that we are using for folks in financial need. The rest of it is coming from individual donors, from the faith communities who partner with us, from grants that we write to mostly local foundations or corporate partners are part of that support as well. And but the largest part of our budget really is the in-kind. If we were to pay people to serve the 25,000 people we served last fiscal year, it would have cost at least $800,000 to do that. So most of our budget, at least a third of our budget, we consider in kind, the volunteer time and the food donations and other donations that are coming to us.
Yeah, and I'd also like to add that every once in a while we get these cute little cards from the recipients, and there's like, $5 in there, and these sweet little notes saying, I wish I could give more, but I'm so grateful for what you do. We love to collect quotes that, people call up and say, oh, these, wonderful things about the drivers. Any other questions?
We're getting the high five here. Cheryl and I will be here for questions. Our materials are on the table there. We'd love to talk with you about the services available and volunteer opportunities. Thank you for your time, and please be with you.
I know this has been very personal for me. With my wife's deterioration, she went from looking in her 50s to looking in her 80s in about 2 months. And we'd be out, and people would say, so you brought your mother? Of course, if you knew Lynn, she was very feisty, so she didn't wave anything like this at them, but she was tempted. In the last 3 weeks, she was not able to walk very well, so she'd say, I have to get up and go to the bathroom. And I'd come over to grab her, and she'd go, wait. And she didn't want to give up her independence, so she wanted to see whether she could stand up and walk before I would help her. So it's such a huge issue for the elderly as they lose their independence, and the issues of dignity are very, very pronounced in our community. And one of the movements is to see that we can keep them in their homes. So, Ron, would you stand up? Ron Swigert is a friend that ran Christian Companion, and I got to know him. Some of you want to know how I know all these people. I've been running a parachurch he started a 501c3 to help. And I asked him just to keep it short and tell one story that I knew about. So I still have the hook out for you. Come on up.
My name is William McCaffrey, and I'm the executive director of a 3-grade corps. Unusual name, but what we do is we do in-home care for the elderly on a sliding scale, as he said. We're also a Christian organization. We have our brochures in the back. I won't go into too terribly much since I've been given already the eye over here. I'd like to share one story with you that changed my life. I initially came out here to assist Ron Swazier in opening up a nonprofit. It was never my intention to stay and actually run it. I had quite a background in it, but I was at the office one day and I was alone. There was no one in there for some reason. I was the only one in. And the phone rang and I had to answer it, and a lady named Agnes was on the other end. She's 85. She proudly told me that she lives alone in a small trailer on Miracle Mile, and that she had lost her right hand, or her arm, from the elbow down as a young girl, and that she now had rheumatoid arthritis. And, you know, I sympathized with her. She said, oh, no, I have 3 children. I've raised them. I've worked my entire life. My left hand's just given out, and I can't brush my hair. I can't brush my teeth, and I'm finding it very difficult to prepare meals. And so I arranged for an assessment, and I went with our LPN out to do the assessment. When we go out to folks like that, the first thing we do is we try to identify what all their needs are, and hers were great. She didn't have food. She had shrunken quite a bit, so even though she had a closet full of clothes, none of them fit, and she had one house dress. What we were able to do is to provide her care twice a week for 3 hours a day, and at a greatly reduced rate. But on the other days, we called her to make sure she's okay. We have a trunk phone tree that we've started with volunteers, and they will call them in the morning and the afternoon to remind them to take their medications. We also have our CNAs that go out, and when they do the care, they do a visit report, so that because they're trained to identify with the problems as seniors start to decline. We also send family members pictures, and we take them to the store, to the park. We'll snap a shot and text it to them. But the ministry is so great, the need is so great, and I would encourage any of you that serve seniors in your community, know neighbors, if you would please take a flyer of ours and have it on handy, because I guarantee you by the end of the week you'll probably run into somebody who needs us. And I just want to thank you guys very much.
That was good. I know that there's a lot of people here that work with elderly. Most of us, I used to, when I was running renewal counseling, we did a seminar every year called Taking Care of Your Aging Parents. So a lot of people would see caring for their parents as a ministry as well. So I know that it goes on in every family, but also penetrates the community on this. So Al Story, would you stand for a second? Al is the chaplain for Fellowship Square, and there's a lot of ministries in our community that have targeted the elderly. Libby, would you stand for a second? Libby started with Giving Tree with working with the elderly. We did collaboration when I was doing renewal counseling. And so, is there anybody else that targets elderly that I'm missing? Tell me your name.
My name is Donald Lamar.
And tell me your ministry.
We have church services at different senior citizen home there.
Great, thanks. Okay, we're going to take about 10 minutes. If you look on your table, you have a sheet like this. We want you to discuss the 3 questions on there.